They laughed even before the race started, because to everyone there, the scene seemed like a ready-made joke. On one side, the confident young millionaire, wide smile, relaxed posture, pointing disdainfully at the old car, parked under the watchful eyes of elegant guests, as if he were already celebrating victory before the challenge even began. And on the other side, the old man with slow steps, clothes worn by time, calloused hands carefully holding the steering wheel of a vehicle that carried more rust than prestige, while the crowd murmured low phrases, some full of pity, others laden with sarcasm, because nobody believed that this simple man had any real chance. And when the millionaire finally said aloud that the company would be his if he managed to win the race with that junk, it wasn't just a bet thrown to the wind, it was a public humiliation, a cruel test imposed before witnesses. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, until the old man raised his gaze with disconcerting serenity, accepting the challenge without raising his voice, without arguing terms, without trying to convince anyone. It was nothing, like someone who had already lost and survived things far greater than a race. And at that instant, something invisible shifted in the air, because while the millionaire saw only a spectacle, the old man saw there a last opportunity to prove not speed but dignity. And when both took their positions, the engines were started and eyes turned to the improvised track. No one there realized that this race would not be decided only by power or money, but by endurance, memory, and choices made throughout a lifetime. And when the signal was given and the cars moved forward, taking with them dust, applause, and laughter, the public did not yet know. But they were about to witness not an ordinary competition, but the exact moment when arrogance would be put to the test, and when an underestimated man would show that not everything that seems old is outdated, because sometimes it is precisely what carries the most history that manages to go furthest when no one else expects it. Before we delve into this amazing story, tell me which city and state you're watching from. Leave a comment and I'll reply with gratitude. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like this video. We want to share more stories like this. When the cars stopped side by side and the dust still hung in the air, the atmosphere that had previously seemed festive began to take on a strange, almost uncomfortable weight. Because even before the race truly began, something had already slipped out of the young millionaire's control. He continued smiling at the guests, waving his hand as if guaranteeing an easy spectacle, while loudly proclaiming that it was just a joke, a quick game, a fun way to teach a lesson to someone unfamiliar with their surroundings. Each laugh that arose around him fueled his self-confidence, while simultaneously deepening the silent humiliation of the old man, who remained standing beside the old car, observing everything with calm, almost respectful attention, as if absorbing every detail of that moment for something that went far beyond the race. For him, it wasn't about winning applause, but about facing yet another of those life challenges without asking permission. And while the millionaire spoke of figures, contracts, and recent achievements, the man recalled empty roads, long nights, and difficult decisions made when there was no audience to watch. This difference in experiences began to manifest itself subtly but powerfully in the way each prepared. The young man adjusted his expensive watch and checked his cell phone one last time, preoccupied with recordings, photos, and glances, while the older man simply settled into his seat, carefully adjusted the mirrors, and placed his hands on the steering wheel as if rediscovering something familiar, something that had saved his life more than once. Gradually, the murmurs from the audience intensified, with malicious comments about the car's appearance, quick bets being placed, and cruel comparisons arising from all sides. For most of those people, that race already had a winner defined before the start, and this made everything even more cruel, as the result seemed so obvious that no one bothered to hide their contempt. It was in this scenario that one of the guests approached the millionaire and asked jokingly if he was truly willing to hand over the company if he lost. He replied, laughing loudly, that that would never happen because some things simply don't change, making it clear that for him, that bet was just a way to reaffirm his superiority. Meanwhile, the old man, a few meters away, listened to everything without reacting, not out of fear, but because he knew that empty words were never capable of moving anything forward. And when the improvised signal for the start of the race was given, with someone raising their arm in the middle of the track, a curious silence began to spread, as if even the laughter had understood that something serious was about to happen. At that moment, the young millionaire felt a strange pang in his chest, not of fear but of impatience, because he wanted to finish it quickly, to prove to everyone that he was right. Meanwhile, the old man breathed deeply, feeling his heart beat steadily and steadily, as on so many other occasions when he had needed to trust himself more than the surrounding circumstances. And when the arm finally came down, the engines responded almost simultaneously, eliciting applause and shouts, "Shh!" and exclamations from the audience. And in the first few meters, the advantage of the modern car became evident, easily taking the lead, which provoked more laughter and confirming comments, as if that ended the story right there, while the old car followed close behind without apparent hurry, maintaining a steady pace. And the young millionaire, looking in the rearview mirror, felt even more confident as he saw the distance increasing, accelerating more, determined to turn the victory into a humiliating spectacle. But what he didn't realize was that that seemingly simple road hid curves, irregularities and stretches that demanded something more than brute speed. They demanded reading, patience and respect for the road, qualities that the old man had learned not in books or training, but over decades facing unpredictable routes. And as the race progressed, the public began to move in cars and on foot to better follow the course, creating an atmosphere of an improvised event that mixed expectation and disbelief. And it was at this point that the millionaire began to realize that despite the initial advantage, something wasn't happening as expected. He imagined, because in certain stretches, the old car seemed to close in again, not by force, but by consistency, taking advantage of every tiny mistake made by the young man, every overconfidence on tighter curves, every unnecessary acceleration in sections that demanded caution. And this began to truly bother him, not because he was losing, but because he didn't understand how someone in that condition could remain so present, so firm. And this unease began to affect his posture, leading him to make small slips, while the old man remained focused, eyes fixed on the road, mind silent, remembering other challenges faced when all seemed lost. And even without the result being clear at that moment, something had already changed profoundly, because the audience, previously noisy and mocking, began to quiet down. Some no longer laughed. Others observed with a new, almost respectful curiosity, realizing that this race was not as simple as it seemed, and that perhaps the biggest mistake had been underestimating someone who carried an entire history on their shoulders. And as the cars continued advancing towards the final stretch of the course, each became increasingly clear that this was not just a race for speed, but a confrontation between two worldviews, one built on shortcuts, applause and easy certainties, and the other forged in resilience, learning, and choices made when no one was watching, preparing the ground for an outcome that had already begun to take shape long before the finish line appeared on the horizon. As the race progressed towards the final stretch, the tension was no longer just in the engines or the distance between the cars, but in the heavy silence that had taken over the audience, because no one there dared to laugh, comment, or make bets anymore, as if everyone had been forced to confront their own arrogance upon realizing that this competition did not obey the simple rules they had imagined at the beginning. The young millionaire, now with his jaw clenched and his gaze fixed ahead, began to feel something he didn't quite understand: the gradual loss of control, not only of the car, but of the narrative he himself had created, because in his mind that race should already be over, should have already served as definitive proof that money, technology, and status always win. And yet, with each miscalculated turn, with each late breaking, he felt the weight of his own impatience turning against him, while the older man continued steadily, maintaining an almost disconcerting pace, like someone who understands that reaching the end is more important than arriving first at any cost. This difference in mentality began to become visible when the road entered a narrower section, with sharp curves and uneven asphalt, demanding total attention. It was there that the modern car abruptly reduced its speed after a small but significant mistake, allowing the old car to get closer than anyone imagined possible. This provoked a restrained murmur among the spectators watching from a distance, because at that moment, the idea of a turnaround ceased to be absurd and became real. The millionaire, noticing the approaching car in his rearview mirror, felt his pride replaced by an almost childlike unease, accelerating beyond what was necessary, as if trying to escape not the other car, but the possibility of losing in front of everyone. This hasty reaction only increased his mistakes, while the elderly man remained attentive, respecting every limit of the road, as if silently conversing with the path, understanding where he could advance and where he needed to retreat. As they approached the final stretch, the scenery began to open up again, revealing the improvised finish line in the distance, surrounded by people now completely absorbed by what they saw, and the sound of the engines mingled. Their hearts raced, because no one there wanted to admit it, but everyone already felt they were about to witness something unforgettable. When the millionaire attempted a risky overtaking maneuver to reaffirm his superiority, the car responded with a slight imbalance that forced him to quickly correct his course, losing speed in the process. It was at that exact moment that the old car surged forward, not explosively but steadily, passing alongside like an inevitable presence, causing a silent shock to the young man's mind. For a few seconds, he couldn't process what was happening, while the old man kept his gaze fixed ahead, without celebrating, without looking to the sides, just continuing on. For him, that overtaking wasn't a personal triumph, but the natural consequence of choices made throughout a lifetime. When the finish line was crossed, there were no immediate shouts, no instant applause, just a deep, almost reverent silence, as everyone tried to understand what had just happened. The young millionaire slowly reduced his speed, parking a few meters ahead, hands firmly on the steering wheel, but with the empty gaze of someone who had just lost something he couldn't name. And the old man parked soon after, carefully turning off the engine, remaining seated for a few seconds, breathing deeply, like someone respecting the closing of a cycle before leaving. When they both got out of their cars, their eyes met differently than before. There was no longer mockery from one side, nor expectation of approval from the other, only a naked and undeniable reality between them, observed by dozens of witnesses who now understood that the bet was never just about speed or material possessions, but about the value given to experience, humility, and persistence. The young millionaire, after a few moments of hesitation, walked towards the old man, each step heavier than the last, feeling the weight of his own words spoken hours before, while everyone awaited the outcome. When he finally stopped in front of the simple man, he took a deep breath and acknowledged defeat aloud, not with anger, but with a mixture of disbelief and newfound respect, fulfilling the agreement before everyone, stating that he would keep his word, because at that moment he understood that losing in that way had taught him something that no easy victory ever could have taught him. And the old man listened in silence, without raising his voice, without demanding guarantees, simply accepting the recognition with the same dignity with which he had accepted the challenge. And when the audience finally broke the silence with restrained applause, it was not a common celebration, but a collective gesture of belated recognition, as if everyone were applauding not only the winner, but the correction of a mistake they had made in underestimating someone before their very eyes. And in the days that followed, that story spread rapidly, not as gossip, but as an example, being told and retold in conversations, social networks and meetings, always highlighting not the material loss of the young millionaire, but the visible transformation in his attitude, which began to act with more caution, listen more, and judge less, while the old man, now recognized, did not let himself be carried away by the spotlight or vanity, using his new position with responsibility and awareness, always remembering where he came from and how much it cost him to get there. And so that race, which began as a spectacle of humiliation, ended as a silent lesson for all who watched, making it clear that true value lies not in what seems new or powerful, but in what withstands the test of time, learns from losses, and moves forward, even when no one believes in it, proving that some victories are not measured by the finish line, but by the ability to remain whole after crossing it. And if this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone you love too. Click now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming stories we're preparing with great care for you.